Blake Morrison stood in the corner of the Sterling Art Gallery, watching wealthy collectors browse past her carefully curated exhibition like they were window shopping at a clearance sale. 3 months? That was how long she had before the bank foreclosed on the gallery her parents had built from nothing. The irony was not lost on her that she was hosting an auction for people who spent more on wine than she made in a year. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the high-ceilinged space. Sold for $75,000 to the gentleman in the back. Blake forced a smile as another piece left her collection. The commission would help, but it was like using a teaspoon to bail water from a sinking ship. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text from the hospital about Emma's treatment plan. Another bill she couldn't pay. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted her spiral of anxiety. "Are you Blake Morrison?" She turned to find a man in an expertly tailored charcoal suit studying her with an intensity. It made her want to check if she had something on her face. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that looked professionally styled and eyes so green they seemed almost artificial in the gallery lighting.
"I am,"
she replied, extending her hand professionally. "Can I help you with something?" Riley Chen. His handshake was firm, confident. "I need to hire you," Blake blinked. "I'm sorry, hire me. The gallery doesn't do private consultations. But I can recommend some excellent advisors if you are looking to start a collection. I don't want to buy art." Riley glanced around the room, then lowered his voice. "I need a wife, temporarily, and I'd like it to be you." For exactly 5 seconds, Blake's brain completely stopped processing information. Then she laughed, a nervous sound that came out louder than intended. Several nearby guests turned to look. "It's hilarious," she said, still chuckling. "Did someone put you up to this? Was it my assistant? Because this is exactly the kind of weird prank she would pull." Riley didn't smile. "I'm completely serious. I have a business proposition that would be mutually beneficial. Can we speak somewhere private?" Something in his expression made Blake realize he was not joking. She led him to her small office behind the main gallery, her mind racing through possible explanations. Was this some elaborate scam? A reality show prank? Had she accidentally stumbled into an alternate dimension where random billionaires proposed to struggling gallery owners? Once inside, Riley closed the door and pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "I'll be direct because I assume your time is valuable. My grandfather, Henry Chen, controls a trust fund worth $200 million. According to his will, I can only inherit if I'm married by my 35th birthday, which is in 6 months." Blake sat down behind her desk, mostly because her legs suddenly felt unreliable. "Okay, that's unusual. But I still don't understand why you're telling me this, because I don't want to get married. At least not for real, not right now." Riley opened the folder and pulled out a document. "My grandfather believes marriage builds character and responsibility. I believe it's an outdated requirement that has nothing to do with my ability to manage the family business. But I'm not willing to lose everything he built because of a disagreement. So you want to fake a marriage?" Blake's voice came out flat. "Temporarily. 6 months should be sufficient. Long enough to satisfy the will's requirements, short enough to have a believable breakup afterward without raising suspicion. And you chose me because I've been to 5 of your exhibitions over the past 2 years. You're intelligent, articulate, and you handle pressure well. I watched you charm a difficult collector into buying 3 pieces last month when he was ready to walk out. You can think on your feet, and you're convincing when you need to be." Blake felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had not noticed anyone paying that much attention to her work. "That's flattering in a slightly creepy way, but I'm not interested in participating in fraud. It's not fraud. We would be legally married. Everything would be legitimate from a legal standpoint. The only difference is that we'd have an agreement about the terms and timeline." Riley pulled out another paper. "I'm prepared to offer you $150,000. $75,000 up front. $75,000 when we finalize the divorce." The number hit Blake like cold water. $150,000. That would cover Emma's medical bills with enough left over to save the gallery. Her sister could get the surgery she needed. The gallery her parents had loved could stay open. "Why me specifically?" she asked again. "You could hire an actress, a model, someone who's used to playing roles, because my grandfather is extremely perceptive. He built a tech empire by reading people better than they read themselves. He would see through a performance. But you are genuine. You care about things. Art, family, legacy. He would believe that someone like you could fall for someone like me. Blake laughed bitterly. Someone like me? You mean someone desperate enough to consider this insanity? I mean someone with integrity who's been dealt a difficult hand. Riley's expression softened slightly. I did my research, Blake. I know about your sister's condition. I know the gallery is struggling. I know you work 16-hour days trying to keep everything together. I'm not trying to take advantage of your situation. I'm offering a solution that helps both of us. And what do you get out of this, besides the obvious inheritance? Freedom. My grandfather has been pressuring me to settle down for years. This satisfies his requirements while allowing me to focus on the company without constant interference about my personal life. After 6 months, we go our separate ways. You'll have financial security, and I'll have control of the business. Blake picked up the document and scanned through it. The legal language was dense, but the terms seemed straightforward. Marriage, 6-month minimum duration, generous financial compensation, mutual agreement on public appearances and family events. There was even a clause about maintaining separate residences. This is crazy, she said finally. You realize this is completely crazy, right? Completely, Riley agreed. But sometimes crazy is the only option that makes sense. Blake thought about Emma in that hospital bed, joking about medical bills while her hands shook from pain medication. She thought about her parents' legacy, crumbling because she couldn't keep the gallery afloat. She thought about the stack of past due notices on her desk and the voicemail from the bank she'd been avoiding for 3 days. I need to think about it, of course. Take 24 hours. Riley stood and placed a business card on her desk. Call me when you decide. But Blake, one more thing. She looked up at him. My family's complicated. If you agree to this, you'll need to be prepared for scrutiny, judgment, and probably some hostility from my cousin Trevor, who's next in line for the inheritance if I don't meet the will's requirements. This won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Blake replied automatically, then caught herself. Not that I'm saying I'm doing this. I'm just saying hypothetically if I were to do something this ridiculous. Riley smiled for the first time, and it transformed his entire face from intimidating businessman to someone who looked almost approachable. Hypothetically, of course. After he left, Blake sat in her office for a long time, staring at the business card. Riley Chen, Chief Executive Officer, Chen Technologies. A quick internet search revealed he was exactly who he claimed to be. 34 years old, graduated top of his class from MIT, had taken over the family business after his father's death 5 years ago. There were photos of him at charity events, business conferences, always looking serious and slightly uncomfortable in the spotlight. She pulled up her bank account on her computer. The numbers stared back at her accusingly. Then she checked her email and found 3 more messages from the hospital billing department. Blake picked up her phone and dialed her sister. Hey, Emma answered on the second ring, her voice bright despite everything. How's the fancy auction going? Sell anything to someone famous? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay, now you're scaring me. What's wrong? If there was a way to pay for your treatment, to make sure you got the surgery you need, but it required me to do something unconventional, would you want me to do it? There was a long pause. Blake, what are you talking about? Just answer the question. No? Emma's voice was firm. I don't want you sacrificing anything for me. We've talked about this. But if it wasn't really a sacrifice, if it was more like a temporary job, you're being weird and cryptic, and I don't like it. What's going on? Blake looked at Riley's business card again. I think I might be about to do something either really smart or really stupid. I'm not sure which yet. Those are usually the same thing in your case, Emma said with a laugh. Look, whatever you're considering, just promise me you'll be safe, okay? No selling organs or joining cults. Promise. No organ selling or cult joining. After hanging up, Blake sat in the quiet office and made her decision. She picked up Riley's card and dialed the number. He answered on the first ring. Blake, I'll do it, she said before she could change her mind. But I have conditions. I'm listening. First, my sister never knows the real arrangement. As far as she's concerned, we met and fell in love like normal people. Second, I want 75% of the money up front, not 50. And third, if at any point this arrangement puts my sister or my gallery at risk, I walk away regardless of the contract. Done, done, and done. She could hear the smile in his voice. Should I send a car for you tomorrow? We should start planning how we're going to convince my family we're madly in love. Blake laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I can't believe I'm doing this. It's for what it's worth. I think you're making the right choice. Ask me again in 6 months, as she hung up. Blake looked around her small office, at the gallery beyond the door, at the life she had been barely holding together with determination and duct tape. In 6 months, everything would be different. She just had to hope that different meant better. What she didn't know was that Riley's grandfather, Henry, had been watching the entire exchange from a carefully positioned security camera. And the old man was smiling. The Morrison estate in Cape Cod looked like something from a magazine about people who summered as a verb. Blake pressed her nose against the window of Riley's Tesla as they drove up the winding driveway, taking in the sprawling white mansion with its ocean views and perfectly manicured gardens. You grew up here? She asked, trying to keep the awe out of her voice. Summers and holidays, Riley replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. My parents wanted me to appreciate the family legacy. Mostly I remember being lonely in a very large house. Blake glanced at him. Over the past 2 weeks, they had met 6 times to coordinate their story. She knew his coffee order, his mother's maiden name, and the fact that he had a scar on his left knee from falling off a bike when he was 8. What she didn't know was how to reconcile. The nervous man beside her with the confident businessman who had proposed this arrangement. We can still back out, she offered quietly. Tell your grandfather we rushed into things and lose everything. Riley shook his head. No, we do this together. Just remember the story. We met at your gallery 3 months ago. I came in looking for a piece for my office. You recommended an emerging artist whose work spoke to themes of connection and isolation. We started talking and didn't stop for 4 hours, right? And you asked me to dinner. I said no 3 times because I don't date clients. And you finally wore me down by buying a painting and then claiming you needed help hanging it, which is when I kissed you in front of a sculpture of intertwined hands. Blake felt her cheeks warm at the memory of their practice kiss 2 days ago. Riley had been clinical about it, explaining they needed to look comfortable with physical affection. The kiss itself had been brief and awkward, both of them counting to 3 before pulling away. She had not expected her heart to race quite so fast. The front door opened before they reached it. An older woman in a crisp blue dress stood there, her silver hair pulled back elegantly, her smile warm but assessing. Riley, darling, she said, pulling him into a hug. And this must be Blake. I'm Margaret, the housekeeper. But everyone calls me Maggie. Mr. Henry's in the library waiting for you both. They followed Maggie through rooms that looked like they belonged in a museum. Original artwork lined the walls, and every piece of furniture seemed to have a story. Blake tried not to gawk, reminding herself that for the next 6 months, she was supposed to belong here. Henry Chen was not what Blake expected. Instead of the intimidating businessman she had pictured, she found a man in his 70s, sitting in a comfortable chair by a window. Reading glasses perched on his nose, a book in his lap. He looked up when they entered. And his eyes, the same startling green as Riley, studied her with an intensity that made her want to confess everything. His voice carrying affection Blake had not heard before. This is Blake Morrison. Miss Morrison. Henry stood and crossed the room with surprising energy. I've heard so much about you. Please sit. Tell me about yourself. For the next hour, Blake found herself in the strangest job interview of her life. Henry asked about her gallery, her family, her views on art and business and the future. He was charming and funny, sharing stories about building his company from nothing, about the mistakes he made and the lessons he learned. My grandson tells me you convinced him to buy a painting of a tree that was actually painted upside down, Henry said with a smile. Said it represented perspective. Blake felt Riley tense beside her. They had not discussed this detail. She improvised quickly. Actually, the artist intended it that way. She wanted viewers to question their assumptions about growth and direction. Riley understood that immediately. Most people just saw a weird tree, and what did you see? Henry asked. I saw someone willing to look at things differently. Someone who didn't need art to be comfortable or easy. Someone brave enough to hang something unconventional in a corporate office. Henry laughed, delighted. No wonder my grandson fell for you. You're a saleswoman and a philosopher. Dinner was served in a formal dining room with enough silverware to confuse a etiquette expert. Riley's Aunt Patricia joined them, a sharp-eyed woman who managed the family's charitable foundation. She asked pointed questions about Blake's background, her education, her family's history. Blake answered honestly, feeling like she was being appraised and found wanting. So your parents ran a small gallery in Boston, Patricia said, making small sound dismissive. How quaint. They believed art should be accessible to everyone, not just collectors who could afford five-figure pieces, Blake replied evenly. They built something meaningful from nothing. I'm proud to continue their work, assuming you can keep it afloat, Patricia said with a thin smile. I understand the art world is quite competitive. Riley's hand found Blake's under the table, squeezing gently. Blake's gallery has an excellent reputation. She's featured emerging artists who've gone on to show at major museums. How wonderful that she has you to support her now, Patricia said. And Blake could not tell if it was meant as a compliment or an insult. After dinner, Henry invited them for a walk through the gardens. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Blake walked between Riley and his grandfather, listening to Henry tell stories about building the estate, about Riley's childhood adventures in these same gardens. Can I ask you something, Blake? Henry said suddenly, and I'd like an honest answer. Blake's heart stopped. This was it. He had seen through them. Of course. Do you love my grandson? She felt Riley go rigid beside her. They had practiced this answer, rehearsed it a dozen times. But standing there in the fading light, with Henry's kind eyes watching her carefully, Blake found herself abandoning the script. I think love is complicated, she said slowly. I think it's easy to fall for the idea of someone. Riley is successful and intelligent, and he sees the world in interesting ways. But real love takes time. It's built through shared experiences and honest conversations and choosing someone even when it's difficult. Do I have feelings for Riley? Yes. Could those feelings become something deeper? I hope so. But I'm not going to stand here and claim I know everything about love when I'm still figuring out everything about him. Ah! The silence stretched out. Riley had stopped breathing entirely. Then Henry smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me in years. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. You told me the truth. I like you, Blake Morrison. That night, Blake lay in the guest room Henry had insisted she use, staring at the ceiling and replaying the evening. Her phone buzzed with a text from Riley, whose room was down the hall. Thank you for tonight. You were perfect, she typed back. Your grandfather is wonderful. I feel terrible lying to him. Me too. Blake was about to put her phone away when another text came through. What you said about love? Did you mean it? She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Every word. Good night, Riley. Next few weeks fell into a strange rhythm. Blake and Riley attended charity galas, where they smiled for cameras and fielded questions about their relationship. They had dinner with various Chen family members, each one trying to assess whether Blake was worthy of their precious Riley. They spent weekends at the Cape Cod estate, walking the gardens and having long conversations that had nothing to do with their arrangement. Blake found herself learning things about Riley that surprised her. He was funny when he relaxed, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He was generous, quietly supporting causes he believed in without needing recognition. He listened when she talked about art, asking thoughtful questions that showed he actually cared about her answers, and Riley seemed to be discovering things. About Blake, too. He showed up at the gallery unexpectedly, helping her install exhibitions and charming difficult clients. He met Emma, who was recovering well from her surgery thanks to the money Blake claimed came from a sudden inheritance from a distant aunt. He brought coffee on mornings when Blake had clearly been up all night working. "We're supposed to be pretending," Blake said one afternoon as they sat in her gallery after closing. "But this doesn't feel like pretending anymore." Riley looked up from the catalog he was reading. "What does it feel like?" "Like friendship. Like partnership. Like something real. Would that be so terrible?" Before Blake could answer, the gallery door chimed. A man in an expensive suit walked in, his resemblance to Riley immediate and obvious. Trevor Chen had arrived. "Well," Trevor said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "The famous Blake Morrison. I've heard so much about you." Riley stood, positioning himself slightly between Blake and his cousin. "Trevor, what are you doing here? Can't I visit my favorite cousin and meet his new fiancée?" Trevor's gaze swept over the gallery dismissively. "Interesting space. Very bohemian. I assume business is good?" "It's fine," Blake said carefully. "Really?" "Because I did some research. Your gallery has been operating at a loss for 18 months. Your sister just had expensive surgery, and suddenly you're engaged to one of the wealthiest men in New England." Trevor pulled out his phone. "Interesting timing, don't you think?" Blake felt ice water in her veins. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Riley has 6 months to get married or lose his inheritance. You have significant financial difficulties. He shows up at your gallery repeatedly over the past 2 years, studying you like a project. Then suddenly, love at first sight?" Trevor laughed. "Please." "I'm not stupid. Get out," Riley said, his voice dangerous. "Now, I'm leaving. But I'm also going to keep digging. Because when I prove this marriage is a fraud, that inheritance becomes mine. Sleep well, cousin." Trevor left, the door chiming cheerfully behind him. Blake sank into a chair, her hand shaking. "He knows." "How does he know?" "He doesn't know anything. He's guessing." Riley paced the gallery. "He's been suspicious since the beginning. But suspicion isn't proof. What if he finds proof? What if someone saw us signing the contract or overheard us planning? What if he talks to your grandfather?" Riley stopped pacing and knelt in front of her chair. "Hey, look at me. We're going to be okay. Trevor is a bully who's scared of losing money he never earned. We just have to be careful." Blake looked into Riley's green eyes and felt something shift in her chest. "I don't want to be careful anymore. I'm tired of pretending. What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe Trevor is right. Maybe this started as a transaction. But it's not anymore, is it? At least not for me." She took a shaky breath. "I care about you, Riley. Really care about you. And I don't know if that's because we've been playing this role so well, or if it's something real, but I need to know what you feel." Riley was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up and cupped her face gently. "I think I started falling for you the first time you argued with me about abstract expressionism. I think I fell harder when you made my grandfather laugh at dinner. And I know I fell completely when you told Emma you won the money and some inheritance so she wouldn't worry about the surgery. You're kind and brilliant and stubborn, and you make me want to be better than I am. So what do? We stop pretending. We make this real." Riley kissed her then, and it was nothing like their practice kiss. This was real and messy and perfect. Blake felt tears on her cheeks and realized she was crying. "We still have to deal with Trevor," she said when they pulled apart. "Let him investigate. Let him dig, because there's nothing to find anymore. This is real now." What neither of them knew was that across town, Trevor was meeting with a private investigator, handing over a file of information. And in Cape Cod, Henry Chen was reading a report from his own investigator. Learning the truth about his grandson's arrangement, the old man smiled and picked up his phone. The text from Henry came at midnight. "Family dinner tomorrow? Everyone must attend. No exceptions." Blake stared at the message, her stomach twisting into knots. She was curled up on Riley's couch in his penthouse apartment. Having spent the evening planning their next move against Trevor, Riley was in the kitchen making tea, blissfully unaware that everything was about to explode. "Riley," she called out, her voice tight. "Your grandfather just texted. He wants a family dinner tomorrow." Riley appeared in the doorway. 2 mugs in his hands. He saw her expression and set them down carefully. That's normal. He does family dinners once a month. The message says everyone must attend. No exceptions. And he sent it at midnight. Blake held up her phone. That's not normal. Riley read the message and went pale. He knows. How could he know? We've been so careful. My grandfather didn't build a billion-dollar company by being easy to fool. If Trevor has been investigating, grandfather probably has too. Riley sat down heavily. This is my fault. I should have been honest with him from the beginning. Blake took his hand. We were both part of this decision. We face whatever comes together. The next evening, they drove to Cape Cod in silence. Blake had chosen a simple green dress, something that felt honest rather than performative. Riley kept glancing at her, his expression unreadable. Whatever happens, he said as they pulled into the driveway, I don't regret this. Any of it. Even if you lose the inheritance. Even then. Because I found something more valuable. The mansion felt different this time. Less welcoming, more ominous. Maggie greeted them at the door with a sympathetic smile that confirmed their worst fears. Everyone's in the dining room, she said softly. Good luck. The dining room was full. Henry sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral. Patricia was there, looking curious. And Trevor occupied the chair opposite Henry, wearing a smile that made Blake want to throw something. Ah, the happy couple, Trevor announced. So glad you could join us. I was just sharing some interesting information with the family. Trevor enough, Henry said quietly. His voice carried authority that silenced the room immediately. But grandfather, don't you want to hear about the contract? About how Riley paid Blake to pretend to be engaged to him? About how this whole romance is an elaborate fraud designed to steal your inheritance? Blake felt the room spin. Riley's hand found hers under the table, gripping tight. I'm aware, Henry said calmly. I've known since the beginning. The silence was absolute. Blake stared at Henry, unable to process his words. You knew? Riley's voice cracked. How? Because I arranged it. Henry leaned back in his chair, looking almost amused. Did you really think I randomly included that marriage clause in my will? Riley, I've watched you build walls around yourself for years. After your parents died, you threw yourself into work and forgot how to be human. I needed to shake you out of that pattern, so you forced me to get married. Riley's voice rose with anger. You manipulated me into this whole situation? I created circumstances. You made choices. Henry turned to Blake. I had investigators watching my grandson for months. When he started spending time at your gallery, studying you like a puzzle he wanted to solve, I knew he had found someone special. I just had to give him a reason to act on it. Blake found her voice. The scholarship for Emma? That was you? The Chen Foundation supports many deserving students. Your sister's application was genuinely impressive. But yes, I expedited the process. I wanted you to have one less burden, one less reason to refuse Riley's proposal. This is insane, Blake said, standing up. Her chair scraped against the floor. You manipulated both of us. You played with our lives like we were pieces on a chessboard. I gave you both an opportunity to find something real, Henry corrected. Riley, left to his own devices, you would have worked yourself into an early grave and never taken a chance on love. Blake, you would have sacrificed everything for your sister and your gallery without ever accepting help. I simply moved some pieces around and let you find each other. Trevor slammed his fist on the table. So you knew it was fake, and you're still going to give him the inheritance? How is that fair? Fair. Henry's voice turned cold. You want to talk about fair, Trevor? You've never worked a day in your life. You spend money you didn't earn on things you don't need to impress people you don't like. You hired investigators to destroy your cousin's happiness because you feel entitled to money I built. Tell me what's fair about that. Trevor's face went red. I'm family too. Family takes care of each other. Family doesn't tear each other down out of jealousy. Henry turned back to Riley and Blake. I apologize for the manipulation. It was wrong of me to interfere so directly in your lives. But I'm not sorry for the result. I've watched you two over these months. I've seen something genuine develop between you. How do we know it's genuine? Blake asked, tears streaming down her face. How do we separate what's real from what was manufactured? Riley proposed because of your will. I accepted because I needed money. Everything that came after, how do we trust any of it? Riley stood beside her. Because I love you. Not because of my grandfather's schemes or the inheritance or any external pressure. I love you because you make me laugh. Because you challenge me to be better. Because you care about art and people and meaning in a world that often feels meaningless. Because when I imagine my future, you're in it. Not as part of a contract or an arrangement, but as my partner, my best friend, my home. Blake looked at him through her tears. You idiot. You absolute idiot. You could have just asked me on a real date from the beginning. Would you have said yes? To a billionaire walking into your gallery? She laughed despite everything. Probably not. I would have assumed you were trying to buy me, which is exactly what I ended up doing, except you didn't buy me. You gave me a choice. And somehow, through all this mess, I fell in love with you too. The real you, not the businessman or the heir or the role you play for your family. You, Riley, the man who brings me coffee and listens to me talk about art for hours and makes terrible jokes when I'm stressed. That's who I love. Patricia cleared her throat. So, are we to understand this marriage is now real? Blake and Riley looked at each other. Riley spoke first. Grandfather, I appreciate what you were trying to do, but I can't accept the inheritance under these circumstances. It's not right. Finally, Henry said with satisfaction, a decision made from integrity rather than obligation. That's what I was waiting for. What do you mean? Riley asked. The will has always had a loophole. You had to be married. Yes. But there was never a requirement that you inherit the money. You could refuse it and still maintain control of the company through other mechanisms I put in place years ago. I needed to know you would choose principle over profit when it mattered. Henry smiled at Trevor. Unlike some family members who will now be removed from any inheritance considerations entirely. Trevor jumped up. You can't do that. I absolutely can. It's my money, my company, my choice. You're still family, Trevor. But you've proven you care more about money than people. I hope you learn better. But until you do, you'll need to make your own way in the world. After Trevor stormed out, Henry turned back to Riley and Blake. So here's what I propose. Riley maintains control of Chen Technologies regardless of marital status. Blake receives full funding to expand her gallery and establish a foundation supporting emerging artists. Emma's scholarship continues through medical school. And you two decide what your relationship looks like, without the shadow of my interference hanging over you. Patricia asked practically. We've already sent invitations. Blake looked at Riley. What do you think? I think we should cancel it. I think we should start over. Real dates, real courtship, real choices. Riley took both her hands. Blake Morrison, would you go to dinner with me? No contracts. No arrangements, no expectations. Just two people seeing if they can build something real? You're asking me on a date? After everything, I'm asking for a chance to do this right. Blake pretended to think about it. Will there be good food? The best. Will you promise to actually be yourself instead of performing? I promise. Then yes. I'll go to dinner with you, Riley Chen. And maybe if things go well, we can talk about a real wedding. Eventually, when we're ready. Henry raised his glass. 2 new beginnings. And to love that's strong enough to survive even a meddling grandfather's worst schemes. 6 months later, Blake stood in her newly expanded gallery at the opening of the Chen Morrison Foundation for Emerging Artists. The space was filled with collectors, critics, and young artists whose work deserved to be seen. Emma was there, healthy and happy, starting her first year of medical school. Patricia had become an unexpected ally, helping Blake navigate the business side of art world. And Riley stood beside her, no longer pretending, no longer performing, just present. Thank you for coming tonight, Blake, addressed the crowd. This foundation exists because someone took a chance on me when I needed it most. Because someone saw potential and invested in possibilities. We want to do the same for the next generation of artists. Art matters. Stories matter. And everyone deserves a chance to share their vision with the world. After the speech, as guests mingled and examined the artwork, Riley pulled her aside. "I have something for you." He handed her a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a tiny diamond. Nothing flashy, nothing ostentatious. Just beautiful and honest. "Blake Morrison, will you marry me? For real this time? No contracts, no timelines, no schemes. Just me asking you to be my partner in every sense of the word." Blake looked at the ring, then at Riley, then at the gallery around them, filled with art and possibility and hope. "On one condition, anything. We write our own vows, and they have to be completely honest. No performance. No pretty words we think people want to hear. Just truth. Deal." Riley slipped the ring on her finger, and Blake felt it settle there like it belonged. Like everything that had started fake had somehow transformed into the most real thing in her life. The wedding happened 6 months later. Small and private on the beach at Cape Cod, Emma was her maid of honor. Henry officiated, looking proud and just a little bit smug about his matchmaking success. Patricia helped plan everything with surprising enthusiasm. When it was time for vows, Riley spoke first. "Blake, I fell in love with you while pretending not to love you. I learned that you can't fake real connection. You can't manufacture genuine care. You taught me that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up honestly and choosing each other even when it's complicated. I promise to keep choosing you every day." Blake's turn. "Riley, you walked into my gallery and offered me an escape from my problems. What you actually gave me was a reason to believe good things can happen even in difficult circumstances. You showed me that sometimes opportunities come in strange packages, that taking risks can lead to beautiful things. I promise to keep taking risks with you, to keep building something real, to keep loving you, not despite our messy beginning, but because of it." As they kissed, the ocean waves crashed behind them, and the sunset painted the sky in impossible colors. Henry watched from his seat, satisfied that his final scheme had worked exactly as intended. Sometimes you had to manipulate circumstances to give people permission to find what they needed. And what Riley and Blake needed was each other. 3 years later, the Gallery Foundation supported over 50 artists. Emma finished medical school and opened a clinic in an underserved neighborhood. Riley transformed Chen Technologies into a leader in sustainable tech. And Blake and Riley lived in a renovated warehouse in Boston, surrounded by art and love and the beautiful chaos of a life built on honesty. On their anniversary, Blake found a letter from Henry, written before he passed away peacefully in his sleep at 82. It read, "Dear Blake and Riley, if you're reading this, my interference worked. I'm not sorry. Sometimes people need a push to find their destiny. You two were always meant for each other. You just needed someone stubborn enough to make you see it. Love each other fiercely. Live honestly. And remember that the best things in life often start in the most unexpected ways. All my love, Henry." Blake read it to Riley that night, both of them laughing and crying at the old man's final words.
"He really was a meddling schemer," Riley said. "He really was," Blake agreed.
Thank goodness for that. And in the space between what was fake and what was real, they built something that transcended both. A love story that started with a transaction and became a testament to the truth that sometimes the best things in life can't be bought. Only discovered when you're brave enough to look beyond the surface and see what's actually there.